Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
It's enough. We're done. The political leadership in this country has failed us. We need to go back to making the Department of Defense not a political toy for them to inject their social experiments.
Lloyd Austin, travesty. Former chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, forget about it. Should be recalled on to active duty and court-martialed for what they did in Afghanistan.
Enough's enough. And I pray that Pete gets confirmed tomorrow. He starts taking action on day one.
The military is for one reason only, and that is to defend our country, defend our citizens, and defend our constitutional republic.
Pete Hegseth understands one thing that we all learned with him in combat. You only take the children, our children, American children, to war if you have to. If you absolutely have to is the only time you go to war. And they, damn it, when you get there, you fight to win.
When my son stepped into the military academy, people asked me why. And my hope and prayer to God was that one day it would be the right leadership. And that's what's going to happen tomorrow. So Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense.
Please do not discount or take for granted the idea that you have the men and the women who fought the wars of the last 2 decades here to endorse the new Secretary of Defense. That is the greatest evidence that he is the greatest potential leader for us in the conflicts of the future.
He is a patriot. He never forgets where he came from. He's a great communicator. He's a great leader. And he's going to be a great visionary as the next Secretary of Defense. Go Pete.
These are war fighters. That's who support Pete. That's who's on this podium. These are men and women who put it on the line for our country. And they're telling you the way it is. If you have over 100 SEALs that are going to come to Washington, D.C., you should pay attention to what we're saying.
All the military is coming together already. This never happened before. From the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, the Marines, all coming together.
Call your congressman, call your senator, and make sure that they're on notice that Pete will be confirmed tomorrow. Thank you for your support.
Well, Trump nominees' testimony officially started today. That's the big news. And second big news is there's a hostage deal in the works, apparently, over in Israel to get the American and Israeli hostages out of the hands of Hamas, the Nazis that did the October 7th atrocities. Welcome to Transition Tuesday, the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube and X Spaces simulcast and Truth Social Plus. Well, the circus begins, folks. Secretary of Defense nominee Hegseth was interrupted multiple times by protesters during his opening statement this morning. An opening statement that, to his credit, focused on reviving our manufacturing base, reestablishing deterrence, and putting our armed forces back to work on their primary mission of defending our homeland, our borders, and our vital national interests, and away from wokeism, the Marxism that's infiltrated and infected the entire Department of Defense, from the lowest enlisted airmen in the Air Force to the highest four-star general and highest ranking civilians. That's got to be eradicated. Those are the topics the committee should be asking about. But alas, they did not stay focused on that mission. Unfortunately, even before taking office, the Trump administration is having a positive impact on foreign policy and the wars that broke out under the Biden regime. News of this impending hostage deal in Israel's defensive war in Gaza is breaking only because of the transition to a new American government, in my opinion. Well, my guest today is a veteran TV news producer, host of the Analyst Substack, a former diplomat, and the brand new host of Real America's Voice, American Sunrise Early Edition, Jake Novak. Jake, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's good to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much for that great intro. I'll try to live up to it now.
Well, the circus began this morning. I don't know what you caught of it, but crazy Mazie Hirono, Pocahontas, fake Indian Senator Warren, nutball Tim Kaine, even Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona got into the act, not focusing on the important matters, but focusing on the personal stuff. And to Hegseth's team's credit, they did try to teach him to keep rolling back to the priorities, which is to fix the Department of Defense, to hold people accountable, and those kind of things. And some of the Democrat senators did go into that, but they went into it from the perspective of, you gotta protect these people. We can't be holding general officers accountable or keeping them from going and joining the defense industrial complex corporations on their boards or as corporate officers. We shouldn't be doing that. We got to take care of these people. I don't know. What was your take overall, Jake?
Well, Colonel, the first thing is, and I say this all the time, I've said this well before I ever heard of Pete Hegseth, and I've known him for a long time and things like that. This is an objective truth that is a bipartisan truth. There is no worse advertisement for our democracy, our constitutional republic, than the Senate confirmation hearing process for cabinet members. It is the worst moment of political theater. It's awful. There's not one moment where there isn't hypocrisy, sanctimony, and out-and-out dishonesty on full display. So, and by the way, this was depicted really well in a movie about 25 years ago called The Executive with Jeff Bridges and Gary Oldman. I suggest everyone go see that movie, rent it. It's a good movie. Get it up on your DVR. So that's the first thing. We should always remember that the confirmation hearing process in the Senate has always been an embarrassing piece of political theater. It's ugly. We've got to do something about it. The rules need to be changed, something like that, because it's just awful. But as far as you touched on it, there was very little policy discussed at all so far what we've had with these hearings. And I said it to everyone this morning before the hearing started, that would be the tell. If most of the questions are about drinking, adultery, and what's going to happen to some generals after they leave, forget about what goes on in the actual Defense Department, then that will be a tell that they're really, really hoping that we don't talk about policy. The worst case scenario for these Democrats and Rhino Republicans in this whole process is not Pete Hegseth being confirmed. That wouldn't be their worst case scenario. The worst case scenario for them would be for everyone in America to be saying, hey, I didn't know that was going on at the Pentagon. What? They spent all that money on a DEI program and not getting our troops the right equipment? Who is in charge? Those are the words and the questions they don't want people talking about. And so far, you have to think that probably they're getting what they want so far as that's concerned, because we're talking about it, but you're not going to see any discussion of that on MSNBC, CNN, or the Alphabet networks tonight for sure.
Yeah, the question that popped into my brain, look, I'm an operations person. I'm not an academic, even though I've been to schools and managed to pass adequately, sometimes even slightly above average. But the big question that I captured was, why are the Democrats so afraid of Hegseth? Because they focused on some things that hidden in them are some truly real policy concerns. And some that may be even associated with his background and some of the personal stuff, but they completely missed their target because they were. I mean, Senator Gillibrand was actually screeching at him, and Tim Kaine, he brought up a couple of good policy areas. So did Senator Kelly, but they went off on these tangents about drinking, and I get that. But there are some real policy concerns hidden in those, even the personal issues and concerns, and it just derails the whole advise and consent process, which is supposed to vet these kinds of issues on behalf of the people that voted them in office, right?
Yeah. Well, I made a movie suggestion, so now I feel more comfortable also now making a book suggestion. If you want to know how the Senate has evolved in American history, from what it was initially intended to be to what it is now, read all of the books about LBJ by Robert Caro, but especially Master of the Senate, where the foreword is a very long foreword by Robert Caro, where he describes what the Senate was initially meant to be, which was very much a hands-off advisory role, people kind of sitting almost from 30,000 feet, deciding to very rarely get involved in the machinations and the daily operations of a government, let alone an incoming president. And what you saw today were, it wasn't just Gillibrand. There were a lot of people who were screeching. Warren was screeching. There was the Congressman Gary Peters from Michigan who was shouting. They were all at the end of, when their time was running out, they started to raise their voices because they're hoping to be the soundbite that gets run on MSNBC tonight. So they figure the loudest will be the one that gets it. My bet is that it might be Gillibrand. That's what they were going for. They were going for that loud stuff. But this is the exact opposite of what our senators were meant to be. They were supposed to be almost Solomonic in their sitting back. They were deliberately very old. The average age when the first Senate was seated in 1789 was kind of like 70, which back in 1789 would be like 200 now. That was the point. They wanted older, wiser people there. It's fine if it's a woman now. Of course, obviously they didn't have any women back then, and that was a problem. So they solved that problem. Great. But older and wiser, less hysterical, less quick to fly off the handle and shout at people. I mean, what's the point of shouting at someone? He's not fighting with you. I mean, that's mentally ill behavior when someone just starts to shout at you. The only time to shout at someone is if someone's about to attack you. By the way, that's your first weapon. Back off. Other than that, that's not when you should be shouting at someone.
Yeah. I mean, the contrast, let's take Joni Ernst from Iowa, Senator Ernst from Iowa. Now, she has real legitimate concerns from her perspective that are closely aligned with some of the, especially Senator Gillibrand, concerns about women in the military, about sexual assault in the military, which is a ongoing challenge and problem that we were working real hard on it when I was a senior field commander in the Air Force, and we really haven't done a good job of making good headway on that issue. From the women in the military's perspective. So they have legitimate concerns, but Ernst calmly brought it up, asked him the question they had discussed in their meeting, which was, will you commit to do X, Y, and Z? And in each one of those she did, and made her point without turning it into a circus. And then you have Gillibrand, and I can't remember exactly what she asked, but I know that she has the same concerns, along with a lot of the other women, like Senator Duckworth. Senator Duckworth, another disappointment. A U.S. Army officer wounded in combat, but gets all screechy and stuff, and preachy too, by the way, on how many people have you supervised? I like Mark Wayne Mullins' retort. I think it was, Senator Wicker's retort, which was, Mr. Hegseth, I think you've supervised more people than anybody on this panel and probably in the U.S. and you've proven that today. But the problem is that they're real issues like security clearances. Look, Mr. Hegseth's lawyer said he got blackmailed. Blackmail is a true policy issue and concern when you're talking about the highest security clearances in the land. And Mr. Hegseth should have been given the opportunity to address that from his perspective so that concern could be allayed. But it wasn't, because he wasn't given the opportunity to do that because of all the damn screeching and hand-wringing and yelling at him and those kind of things. And it was brought up, by the way. Same thing about the Uniform Code of Military Justice. He's responsible for enforcing that as the part of the National Command Authority and the senior civilian leader at the Pentagon. He's responsible for that. And his background, the true part of his background, not the made-up crazy stuff, raises a legitimate policy question about that. And Gillibrand tried to ask that, but he never got the opportunity to answer it. That's what's really disappointing about this whole thing, because they're failing to do their job. And the same thing, I'm sure, would happen. It's been a while since we've seen the Republicans on the minority side. It's been 4 years, actually. And I think they did a much better professional job from their perspective 4 years ago. I mean, my goodness, that guy, Randy, or calls himself Rachel or something, got approved in HHS, totally unqualified as far as I'm concerned from a mental health perspective. Should have been covered. Well, hey, we got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to continue this discussion for the next segment about the confirmation, not just of Mr. Hegseth, but I want to get Jake's take on the coming days and see what he thinks is going to happen with some of these folks. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show here on Worldview Tube.
Hey Rob, so we are here at the Capitol for the Pete Hegseth hearing today. A bunch of us have been here since 3 in the morning, but we were able to get in with one of Senator Tuberville's staffers, which is amazing, great guys, and there's a whole group of SEALs and veterans who have worked with Pete, and we're all really excited to be here.
Yep, so we're here to show support for President Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense, and that's what we're here to do. So Carolyn Rocco, Jordan Carr, and signing out. Talk to you soon.
Oh, Jordan, would you like to make a comment to the ex-audience about, this is live. So for those of you that don't know, this is in this room, the most active ex-user is, where is she? Oh, right here. It's Jordan Carr. So you're supporting Pete.
Obviously.
That's why you're here.
Yep. You're supporting
Tell us
Pete.
why.
Why do I support Pete?
Yeah.
One, he's one of us. We have a General Officer Corps that is responsible for decimating the force, leaving billions of dollars of equipment in Afghanistan, getting troops killed. And so the people who say that Pete is not qualified for this position, what is qualified? Because if qualified is everything that I just talked about, we need somebody who's not qualified by the Pentagon standards, by military-industrial complex standards, and by, hopefully, the Senate agrees with us, and they do confirm Pete. But we need somebody different. We need a change agent, and that's Pete.
Excellent. Did you want to? No comment. Say hello.
And there's a lot of female veterans that support Pete. So whatever the media's saying, they're making it up.
We are the media.
We are the media. All right. Thank you, Elon.
Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate it.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show here on Worldview Tube. It's Transition Tuesday, and I've been having some folks that are on this rank and file list, and what you saw there, the two people you saw there, Carolyn Rocco and Jordan Carr, actually are some of the most hardest working people behind that rank and file list, suggesting nominees for appointments that the troops want to work for. And there's a lot more to those two ladies than just that. But I wanted to get them introduced to you because they got there at like 3:00 this morning, and we're standing in line. That's dedication. And that's what I mean when I say these people are hardworking. And when you have two female veterans that are just representative of a really large group that are dedicated that much to go and take care of this business and speak their minds about it. That's great. But the second clip, part of the clip, was inside the committee hearing room. And Jordan is very articulating what they should have been talking about today. The debacle in Afghanistan and how people are going to be held accountable. The killing of Americans unnecessarily, both through that and troops through the COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Building more ships. I mean, those are the things that Ms. Carr was right on target about. And unfortunately, the Democrats failed today in this hearing. My guest today is Jake Novak, the host of the American Sunrise Early Edition on Real America's Voice, a brand new show that's been going on for just a few weeks. I've had the pleasure and the honor of getting to be on it with him. And Jake, welcome back. Before the break there, we were talking about the Hegseth nomination, and we just heard from Carolyn and Jordan there about that. Do you think that there of the following nominees, because Mr. Hegseth's just the first, that there's going to be anybody that raises that much opposition as his nomination is raised in the Armed Services Committee?
No, I think it's clear that they're putting all of their weapons and all their sights onto Pete Hegseth. They've decided that this is the last trophy, the last head that they want on the wall. I think they'll consider that a victory if they can derail him and probably just pack it in. They're not going to have the same theater and work set for anyone else. I mean, they'd love for there be problems with all the Trump nominees, but it's really, there's only so much effort. These people can't really walk and chew gum at the same time. And by the way, Rob, Colonel, they're absolutely destroying their own futures with the way that they're acting at these hearings. There's discussions even among Democrats, actually maybe even mostly among them, about how they don't really have much of a bench. They just lost Gavin Newsom as a potential serious candidate for 2028. They're not going to get him back. Kamala Harris is not a serious candidate. This is what destroys your bench. The audio of these people screeching and yelling at Pete Hegseth is going to be a very big problem for them. I remember in 1987, the Democrats had a woman in Congress named Pat Schrader. She was a Democrat congresswoman from Colorado. She was very senior in the House. She had gotten a lot of things done, and she was seriously considered a candidate for the Democrats in 1988. And she had a little trouble with donors and things weren't working out. And so at the end of 87, she gave a news conference to say that she wasn't running for president. And unfortunately for her, it was a totally human thing. She started to cry. And a lot of people noted that not only did that hurt her future, but it probably hurt some female candidates' futures chances for years to come because she cried. And I don't think that's fair, but that's kind of what happens. The screeching by Warren and Gillibrand today and Mazie and Duckworth is hurting the Democrat bench immeasurably. They will not be able to recover from this that easily. They are screeching. They're sounding exactly like the way that some chauvinistic males are going to portray them for years to come. And they're playing right into that game. Just like with the men on that committee, also shouting at the end, clearly grandstanding, also reminiscent of Cory Booker and some of the moronic things he said years ago in some hearings, I think it was the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. So, this kind of stuff follows you. And in the era of television and the era, more importantly, of social media, where these clips live forever, you're nailed. I mean, LBJ almost lost his chances at ever becoming president because of some shenanigans he pulled when he was a senator on a nominee of Truman named Leland Olds. And when Leland Olds didn't get it, years later, a lot of people said when LBJ lost the primary battles against JFK in 1960, a number of Democrats came over to LBJ and said, "Did you think we would forget about what you did to Leland Olds?" Well, the entire American people are going to say to Gillibrand, Mazie Hirono, and all these other people, "Did you think we were going to forget how you beclowned yourself in this hearing?" Because they won't. They won't forget it. It's going to live forever.
Yeah, because when you go back and you rerun the tape, every one of these folks, not just the women, but every one of them start out with how this is a serious department, this job is immense, etc., and that you're not qualified, and then they go into this ranting and raving, unprofessional screeds. Even Senator Kelly from Arizona, who I thought, I agree with him on some things, like I agree with some of our Republican rhinos folks on some things like shipbuilding. America has got to get back into the shipbuilding business, or we will never deter the People's Republic of China and prevent a wider war or the outbreak of World War III if it's caused by them, quite frankly, because we're behind and we're terrible. Mark Kelly agrees with that. But when I saw his performance today, I'm like, so you're telling me that this guy, this nominee, is not a serious person. So you're going to act like an unserious person instead of trying to get to the policy concerns you have? I mean, that's basically what's left on the table.
Yeah, I got another piece of hypocrisy for you. You know, what Gillibrand was saying specifically, and some of the other people, including Warren, were saying specifically is, Mr. Hegseth, don't you know how many women in the military's feelings you've hurt with those statements that you've made? And Hegseth should have answered, if their feelings are going to get hurt by something that I said, then they don't belong in combat. Someone's going to do a lot worse than hurt their feelings in the field. They're going to blow their brains out. They're going to roll onto an IED. They're going to have their closest buddy blown up in front of them. That's going to be when your feelings are hurt. And you're telling me that these people, that I've committed this error and this horrible thing, if their feelings are really hurt to the point that they can't function, then thank God they're not in combat. That should have been his answer. Hopefully another senator might give it, might answer that for him. Hell, I'll do it. I'll do it tomorrow on my show. But that's the answer he should have given.
Yeah. I mean, he has legitimate concerns. I have legitimate concerns about women in ground combat units. Always have. And look, retired gunnery sergeant Jessie Jane Duff does a great job of explaining that. I think there's a pinned post on her X account that talks about how the Marine Corps was forced to basically not say anything about the results of their testing. And that the real concern is we're creating a generation or multiple generations of women that we know when they're 20 and we let them in the infantry units, they're going to be 100% disabled for the rest of their lives. We know it. We don't do that to men, even though these women could probably do the job and get to the point where they can do it. Their bodies aren't designed to sustain it over long and extended periods of time. That's why we're going to create a whole bunch of 100% disabled veterans on the backside of it that are not planned for, quite honestly, because the political correctness won't allow it to be. So what about, I don't think we're going to see Miss Gabbard this week because they've delayed her over the FBI something or other or paperwork. What is this game they're playing? And will Hegseth go to another hearing, or is this it from the committee perspective? Do you think they'll vote him out of committee and to the floor?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to get out of committee right now. And remember, his fortunes changed when he was first nominated. So I think that time is on his side. But I do think he's going to get out of committee because the Republicans, Colonel, who oppose Hegseth's nomination are not on that committee. So he's going to get out of committee. Right now, I don't think he has the votes on the floor because there's just too many Republicans who probably won't vote for him. But once they are identified very clearly, hopefully we can see what happens to them. Because, a month ago or so when Joni Ernst and Lindsey Graham were identified as not being on his team, they were properly pressured by the democratic process. People spoke out. That's democracy. These people who keep saying they defend democracy don't even know it when they see it. By the democratic process, their own voters and their own constituents, rightfully so, pressured them to change their minds. So Linda Murkowski and some of these other people, maybe even Mitch McConnell, they need to hear from their own constituents. But right now, I don't think that there's enough focus on this. More people were focusing on the hearings today, and I get that. But the hearings aren't his main hurdle. His main hurdle is the full Senate floor and those 2 or 3 Republicans I mentioned who are a no right now. I think whether they've admitted it or not, they're a no. They need to feel the pressure. And again, if the people don't want Hegseth, then fine. But if they want him, they need to put the pressure on those senators.
Yeah, he can only lose, 3 votes, I think. Well, let's take a question from the audience before we go to this break and then come back and talk about this hostage deal potential that's been advertised as of last night. Go ahead, Shell. Who's got the question over there? Lindsay?
We have Liz, sir.
Good afternoon, Colonel Jake. Nice to see you both. My question is very simple. If not Pete Hegseth, then who?
It's a great question.
Yeah. Well, I think it needs to be someone exactly with that background. You played, Colonel, you played in your cold open to the show, someone who said something very important. We've had the longest wartime period and, consistently wartime period in this country since September 11th, since we first went into Afghanistan and then Iraq. We have a very, very large veteran community now, maybe more than we've ever had certainly since the abolition of the draft. So it's got to be someone, Liz, who fought in those wars. And, I know we have a couple of people in Congress like that, and they've let us down. Duckworth, as you mentioned, has been a letdown. But someone who has been has been really about their fellow men and women who fought in those wars, instead of making it about the mythology of themselves. Tammy Duckworth deserves to have a little mythology about her. I mean, she's had her limbs blown off. I don't begrudge her any of the attention and the respect that she gets, but I do begrudge the fact that I don't think that she's been enough of an advocate for her fellow veterans, including disabled ones. If she were, she would have been a much bigger opponent years ago of what's been going on in Afghanistan, what's been going on in the military period. She should have been, and she wasn't. And that is where I'm disappointed in her, not in anything else. So it's got to be someone like Pete who made it about the veterans, who made it about them and not about him or her.
And I would just add, not a general, not an admiral, not somebody that's been in the corporate boards or corporate offices of the any industrial complex, not to lead the whole organization, but somebody that does have combat experience and service below the rank of general over the last 20 years and understand what's going on. And I would just add that I agree with what CBA was doing, Concerned Veterans for America, on getting the Mission Act passed and the community care placed in there and those kind of things. And very grateful for it and have served in my own veteran nonprofit organizations that I was asked to serve on, advocating for the same exact things. All right, so we got to take another break. When we come back, we're going to move this discussion over into this potential ceasefire hostage thing that's really being driven by this guy named Donald J. Trump and all hell breaking loose. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show. It's Transition Tuesday. And Mr. Trump's already having a positive effect on world affairs. We'll be right back.
Tonight to the major breaking news. Israel is on the brink of a deal with Hamas to see the return of 33 hostages in exchange for a 6-week ceasefire and the release of a reported 1,000 Palestinian criminals. Joe Biden and Donald Trump have confirmed that a deal is very close, perhaps even hours away.
We are very close to getting it done. And they have to get it done. If they don't get it done, there's going to be a lot of trouble out there, a lot of trouble like they have never seen before. And they will get it done. And I understand there's been a handshake and they're getting it finished, and maybe by the end of the week. But it has to take place.
We're on the brink of a proposal that I laid out in detail months ago, finally coming to fruition.
And just before coming on air tonight, I learned that Qatar is expected to, tonight our time, within hours, hold a press conference to give an update on the hostage deal. We don't know whether they will be confirming that Hamas has come to the table. But the moment we see our beautiful hostages back on Israeli soil, free, well, it's going to be a feeling unlike any other. Joy, elation, the celebrations will be unimaginable. There won't be a dry eye. But as we sit here, let's not pretend this is the deal we all wanted. The reality is, in order to bring innocent children and mothers and girls home, Israel has had to do a deal with the devil. A deal with the devil. Is it the perfect deal? No. Is it even a good deal? No. No one can walk away from this and say, what a great deal. It's just simply not. What we want, what would be a good deal, is the return of our hostages, all of them, without having to release a single Palestinian terrorist from jail. That is what's right. That is what's ethical. There's no equivalence between the Palestinian criminals held in Israeli prisons and the innocent Israelis kidnapped from their beds in their pajamas by bloodthirsty savages on October 7.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show here on Worldview Tube. It's Transition Tuesday, and adding into the conversation that the transition we're a little under 6 days until President Trump takes the oath of office. Is this news? And my guest today is Jake Novak, the host of Real America's Voice, American Sunrise Early Edition. Jake, there's a lot to unpack in that little clip there from last night, our time. Before I came on, I checked on Hamas's response, and there hadn't been one about an hour before the show started. So if there has been one and you know about it, feel free to discuss that. But I guess my first question is, after listening to it, do you think President Trump has really signed on to a deal that Biden laid down many months ago? That's the thing that jumped out to me from that clip there.
Yeah, there's definitely some caution and hesitation from all of us who support Israel and support President Trump's policies on Israel. We're worried that maybe President Trump, in addition to Israel, have had to concede to a little more than they wanted to. But if that's the case, I can't believe it's because of any confusion or anything else like that. I think it's because there's been an Israeli understanding that probably this is going to go down. You said right there, it's not 100% confirmed yet, but this is the furthest we've come. We're really close now and this is closer than we've come before with these kinds of deals. So I do think it's going to happen, 60-40, 70-30 chance, that kind of thing. But I think that with President Trump coming in 6 days, I think the Israelis are possibly making some concessions now that they wouldn't otherwise want to make, with the belief that Donald Trump will back them up if the Israelis see any kind of deviation from what they expected from Hamas. He will back them up, A, if the Israelis back out, and B, more importantly, if the Israelis decide to really retaliate and ratchet things up. That clip you showed also, there was a very interesting statement she made, and the whole phrase, deal with the devil. And, in this case, she's certainly true. It's certainly true. Hamas, and you called them earlier on the Nazis. By the way, I've written much about it. I even wrote an article several months ago explaining that that's not hyperbole. The Nazis really did create Hamas directly. Directly, they created them. You can look it up when I wrote about it. Hamas was absolutely created by Hitler. But the point is, it isn't the deal with the devil necessarily. Actually, what Israel is dealing with is the angel inside of Israel. The greatest weapon that Hamas and the other terrorists and haters of Israel have is Israel's humanity. That it's not the money, it's not the bombs, it's not the news media, it's not those idiots on the college campuses. Israel's humanity and decency is the greatest weapon the terrorists have against Israel. It always will be. And that's who Israel, and that's really what they mobilized, what they used, what they deployed the other day was Israel's humanity. And that's going to happen because, Colonel, these 33 hostages that Israel's supposed to get, some of them aren't alive. We're talking about bodies. We've been told most of them will be alive. So there could be as many as 16 dead bodies that are coming, that Israel wants to give them a decent burial because, again, it's Israel's decency that is their greatest weapon. And that is why the accusations, when Israel's accused of genocide, smeared with this lie, That's why that lands so hard on Israel's jaw, because they know that's the exact opposite of what Israel is. Israel is the opposite of genocide. They could commit it at any time, by the way. They have all the weaponry to do so. They haven't done it because they don't want to, because they are the victims of the greatest genocide in the history of the modern world. So that's really who we made a deal with today, Colonel. We made a deal with the angel of decency on our side, which happens to be the greatest weapon our enemies have against us. But so be it. So be it.
Yeah, I mean, America has that problem too. Look, I'm a warrior by profession, you know, and pretty hardcore. But you know, Americans feel the same way. We don't like kids getting killed and innocent people getting killed because of dirt bags like the Hamas Nazis. We don't like doing that. But you know, the warrior ethos. I think somebody said it today in the Hegseth confirmation on X that the United States and Israel too needs to really honor the warrior ethos of their population too, and make sure that we don't do deals that result in the potential for this ever happening again. Because I'm telling you, it is. I'm still taken aback by what happened on October 7th, 2023. Even though I know who these people are, I know who these jihadis are, I know who Iran is, and all that goes into that, I really do. But it still, you know, shocks me when I think about the realities of it. Well, let's go ahead and take a question from the audience. I see a hand up over there. Shell, go ahead.
We have AJ, sir.
Thank you so much, Shell. Colonel Jake, there's a piece of breaking information from Hamas that just came out by Times of Israel, and Hamas is saying that the reason they haven't responded to deal because Israel hasn't submitted the map of IDF withdrawal, which is something that they knew that Israel wasn't going to do until Hamas responded. So it looks like they're slow rolling, everybody. What are your thoughts on that? Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, well, you know, that's, I'm glad. Thank you for that update. And that's exactly why I qualified my comments before I spoke. You know, this is closer than we've ever been, but, you know, you got to take it with a grain of salt. We've had a lot of things undermine stuff. Hamas commits terror in many different ways. And I consider this breaking thing that you just told us yet another example. You know, why kill someone once when you can get the pain of doing it over and over again by not killing them? I happen to know some people who were held hostage for months by the Taliban. And one of them told me that every day his captor came and took a knife that had been like sort of mounted on a wall and took it out every morning. And you never knew whether he was going to use it or not. And that way he was able to kill him emotionally many times. If he had actually killed him physically, he would only been able to do that once. So this is another, we have to understand, this is not negotiation. These are not protests. These are attacks. And once you understand that, you can deal with it in a better way. You know that Hamas is going to pull some kind of shenanigan at the last minute. You know that they're going to do this kind of thing. And you just have to make sure that the people who are going to be most susceptible to be hurt by it, which is the hostages' families, are kept indemnified or at least insulated from it in some way. You can't tell them they can't watch the news. You can't tell them they can't go on the internet. But you can get someone to tell them that you're going to hear a number of things in the next few days and hours. You have to take them all with a grain of salt. Hope is what will kill you. The Hamas people know that. They are sadistically enjoying the torture they are putting you through and the hostages through every single day. And this sounds like another example of that. And because that's what they do. That's what they do, Colonel.
Yeah. Do you think the fact that Biden's still around, his people are still involved in this, is having an impact like what we're seeing? Because this is really the same old thing, Jake. The parties on the side that want to stop the killing come together and go further than they've ever gone before. And then Hamas says, "Oh no, sorry about that." And all the while, I don't know what the total number is of hostages we think they have left, but the last I saw was like 100, and most of those people are dead, I'm sure. So they're using dead bodies too, like you said, killing us over and over again. Well, we got to take another break. When we come back, though, we'll see J.D. Vance talk about what it means for all hell to break loose if they don't let them go before 12:01 Eastern time on Monday, the 20th of January. We'll be right back with Jake Novak on The Rob Maness Show.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at WVWFoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at WVWFoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at WVWFoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
Yeah, so first of all, Steve Witkoff is a great guy. He's doing a great job over there. And I think the president, if you talk to world leaders, it's very clear that President Trump threatening Hamas and making it clear that there is going to be hell to pay is part of the reason why we've made progress on getting some hostages out. We're hopeful there's going to be a deal that's struck towards the very end of Biden's administration, maybe the last day or two. But regardless of when that deal is struck, it will be because people are terrified that there are going to be consequences for Hamas. Now, what does that look like? I think, number one, it means enabling the Israelis to knock out the final couple of battalions of Hamas and their leadership. It means very aggressive sanctions and financial penalties on those who are supporting terrorist organizations in the Middle East. It means actually doing the job of American leadership, which Donald Trump did very well for 4 years.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, and we're talking Transition Tuesday with Jake Novak of Real America's Voice about not only the transition team itself and the nominees, but the impact that Donald Trump's new administration, not having even taken office yet, is having on places and events like what's happening in the Middle East with the war against Hamas by Israel and trying to defend itself in this hostage situation. And Jake, I think J.D. Vance laid it out pretty clearly there. What all hell breaking loose means is there will be 100% support of the United States behind Israel to go ahead and finish off these remaining 2 Hamas battalions. And then the stronger sanctions on these entities that are backing them up. And that's not just private entities either or individuals. That's countries, right?
Yeah. There's going to be, I think, first of all, there'll be an immediate resumption of major sanctions on Iran. And more importantly, Qatar, which is, basically plays a lot of roles in the Middle East, but it is mostly connected to Iran. And you're going to see the United States, it won't just be bombing, it won't just be infiltrations by commando units or a detonation of what's left of the tunnel network. You're going to see the United States start to sanction people in Qatar who are really the only lifeline Hamas has always had. That's where they got their money from Iran from. And you would see the United States shut them down. That would cause a huge hue and cry in the Middle East, much more than a bomb ever would. You could blow up these people's homes, but cutting off Qatar and sanctioning some individuals there, freezing accounts, that kind of thing for Qatar, not for Iran, because we've seen it for Iran before, but not for Qatar, that would cause a major reverberation in the Middle East. And that would be, that would be the all hell breaking loose for sure.
Yeah, I would add, this is just my opinion, that you will probably see U.S. Special Operations Forces kinetically involved to get the Americans out if these guys don't let them go. As a matter of fact, I would say that's highly likely and probable. You better let them go, folks. Let me give you a message from America. If you don't let them go by Monday at 12:01 Eastern, the hell you're going to be paying is in hell. That's what's going to happen, in my opinion. It certainly would. If I were the guy raising my right hand, for sure, because I've had enough of this. I had enough of it. You don't do this to civilians. You just don't do it. And we've sacrificed millions of our own people to stop groups like Hamas from doing this to civilians, even one. So you just don't. Well, we got one more hand over in the audience, Jake. Let's go ahead and take that question. Go ahead, Shell.
We have Cookie, sir.
Hey, good afternoon. You answered part of my question with changes or hell to pay coming up on the 20th. Do you see changes with the other countries that have been critical or even harshly critical of Israel and how they're conducting the war once Trump gets into office?
Well, what I do see is, what you'll see is a couple things. We've already seen the beginnings of this. The United States is going to start with the UN, which is, we could do many shows about that, Colonel. But the UN and the UN-sponsored backed International Criminal Court, there is already a case being prepared by the Trump team to sue that court and to basically discredit it completely. So that's one thing. I know that's not the name of an individual country, but that's a good way to get all of these European countries at once in one fell swoop. But yes, I think that there's going to be some major pushback on countries like France, especially, that individually coddle Hamas here and there. And they'll be told, hey, you don't want to pay for your own defense in NATO enough. You don't want to take care of these other things. You're willing to saber rattle. I can't believe I'm using this term. France and Germany in the last few days have been saber rattling over Greenland. I mean, are they kidding me? By the way, that might be the whole reason why we're doing this whole Greenland thing anyway, to get these people to talk about military stuff so that Trump can come back and say, hey, you don't want us to go into Greenland. Why don't you pay for your own defense? How about that? So I think there's going to be a similar response there. Like, you want Hamas to be strong enough to still exist, and you're not willing to pay for your defense? No, you can't have it both ways. You don't get a say. So either you don't talk about this or you pay for your own defense. So that would be kind of nice. That would be kind of nice if if Donald Trump started with that, and that would be a good way. But look, Europe is hopeless. They have long ago, decades ago, lost their rightful place, any rightful place on the world stage in commenting about anything involving Israel or the Middle East. They are corrupt. They're either corrupt or irrelevant. They go back and forth between corrupt and somewhat relevant to irrelevant, and it doesn't matter whether they're corrupt at that point. And so I think right now it's very important not to listen to them. The terrorists in the Middle East have for a long time relied on European better support for them than they could get in the United States. And it's saved their bacon a few times. That has to end. And I think it is going to come to the end, to an end, only because you see what's going on in Britain now. It's also going on in the other countries, like we saw in Germany. The migrant terrorism is going on. Islamist terrorism is going on there. So they don't really have as much of a platform to stand on anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's even and terrorism like what just happened in Germany over Christmas happened here on New Year's. It's the exact same stuff. We're importing it. Look, Americans don't believe those ways, the jihadi way. Natural born or American immigrants that fully embrace the concept is what I'm talking about. So we've imported this stuff. And the Europeans are well on their way beyond where we're at just because of their size, their population centers, how it's laid out, and those kind of things. What about NATO and the impact that the fall and not breakup yet, but the potential breakup of Syria with Turkey's involvement being a NATO member, American allies on the Syrian Defense Force, SDF, that are Kurds being attacked by the Turks. Do you think the Trump administration is going to have a positive impact on resolving these potential conflicts? Not even potential. I mean, I think there's actual fighting going on between the SDF and the Turkish armed forces right now.
Yeah, well, Trump's doing his usual act that he usually does, which is where he talks tough about a nation's policies, and then likes to talk about how he has a good personal relationship with the actual leader of that country. Don't be fooled by that. A lot of people are confused by this, especially with things like China. Believe me, Donald Trump and his administration know that China's been at war with us for many years. Just because Trump wants to have a good handshake relationship with Xi doesn't mean that isn't true. And he's trying to do something similar with Erdogan in Turkey. But don't be fooled. He knows that Turkey trying to take over Syria and become the new Iran-type entity in the Middle East will not be a good thing, especially when they're in NATO. And there will be many ramifications and repercussions from that if Syria continues along that road. If Turkey continues along that road, what I really think is going to happen in Syria is the Balkanization of Syria. And whereas Everyone who learned political, international politics and security theory in college knows that the more small border countries that you have, the more lack of security you have, and you have more problems for war. But we already are in a full-blown conflagration. If the slicing up of Syria is something that can slightly make things better, and more importantly, keep Turkey from having any kind of cohesive control over that nation, then so be it. And then 50 years from now, if that creates new security concerns, I don't see how that's going to be any worse than what we're dealing with now. So, for example, if the Kurds end up with some kind of sliver that makes them border Israel, and then a little bit to the east border other countries, good, fine. Let it all be a mishmash of balkanization, and I think that that's something the Trump administration will get behind, because that will not only give more protection to our allies, but it will stymie Erdogan and Turkey. A alphabet soup mishmash of a new map of Syria will absolutely make things too difficult for one country to dominate.
And Jake, does that make it more likely that that peaceful relationships based on something like economics will develop between those Balkanized areas? I mean, we had a potential in the actual Balkans to have that develop before Rick Grenell left and Trump left office, and I'm hoping they'll reactivate that because it looked like it was on a good pathway. Does that Balkanization effort mean that's got a higher potential or more potential for more fighting and death?
No, absolutely have a higher potential. Let's think of it this way, folks. This is like your options when you go to a restaurant with only one main course versus a buffet. You don't like this main course? Okay, what's on the buffet? And let's see what we have here on the buffet. We've got some noodles, we've got some eggs, we have some fish, we have some meat, and some of those things are going to be things that we want to load on our plate. There's going to be the chance, if you balkanize this area and you give me Kurds, you give me some of these other former terrorists, then someone's going to come to the table, someone's going to come on my plate, and that's what's going to work. I'm going to get you, and that's we want a buffet in this area, because the monolith, if you remember, during probably the worst period for Israel was there was a brief period where Syria and Egypt were officially the same country. If you remember that, the United Arab Republic, the UAR. And that was one of the things that preceded the Six-Day War, and even preceded the Yom Kippur War, even though it was dissolved before then. So we don't want this conglomerate of everyone against the United States and against Israel. I want to balkanize the heck out of you and work with the people that I can work with. And that's, by the way you have to work in places like Africa, too. Tell me what tribe you're in, and I'll tell you how I can deal with you. And the same thing in the Middle East. Tell me what ethnic group you're part of, also tribes, and I'll tell you whether or not I can deal with you. And if you're all conglomerated into some phony nation that the British drew up 100 years ago, it's not going to work. And it's not going to work for you either, frankly.
Yeah, now that you mentioned tribal lines and readopting those and getting away from the European border lines in that part of the world may be one of the best things to do as this balkanization happens. Let it happen along the natural tribal lines that existed beforehand. We hear complaints after complaint after complaint from folks that are from that part of the world, that live in that part of the world, about that issue. I've been hearing it all of my life, and my life being around Muslims started when I was about 7 or 8 years old, when my dad took us to North Africa. So, well, Jake, thank you so much for coming on today. I wanted to ask you one more question. You only got about 30 seconds, though. Okay. Tulsi or RFK Jr., which one will have the worst time, and will both of them be confirmed?
It's going to be Tulsi, because there are a lot of wives and other spouses of members of that Senate committee who believe in a lot of the stuff that RFK pushes, and they don't want to go home and deal with that. And it's a lot easier to demonize Tulsi Gabbard. Plus, there's going to be a get back at her for what she did to Hillary Clinton and what she did to Kamala push among the senators. So it's going to be Tulsi. RFK will have an easier time.
The long knives are out. That's for sure. Well, Jake Novak, thank you so much for coming on, sir. I've had your X account up, and you can find him on Real America's Voice early in the morning on American Sunrise Early Edition. It's a great show. If you're up at that time of day like I am, I watch it every morning. And I'm Rob Maness. Tomorrow is Whistleblower Wednesday, and I'm fired up. Chad Caton is going to be with us. And quite honestly, I don't know exactly what we're going to be talking about, but I'm sure we'll be talking about at least a little bit about hearings and confirmation hearings because they're continuing in the morning. I'm Rob Maness at Worldview Tube. I'll see you then.